For a great cup of joe, there's one thing you should know. Your morning brew can also be playful. Buff Boy Brewing guys make the temperature rise, and you surely feel naughty when you swallow our coffee. If you want some real heat, give your mouth a fine treat. You will want some more, rest assured. Buff Boy Brewing, you can't get enough of.
It's time for The Scribble, your weekly fix of celebrity chats, bizarre stories in the news, and basic random chatter with best-selling author and syndicated radio host Jeremy Bradley. Make sure your seat is in the upright and locked position and your barf bag is securely in place. Here's Jeremy Bradley.
Thank you very much, Larson. Jeremy Bradley here, coming at you live on The Scribble. It is Friday, July 19th, and I believe it was just last week or the week before that I told you that we were pre-taping our July shows because I don't want to work in July. Well, as luck would have it, because I'm an entertainment reporter, and really almost any time in the last, any time in the last at least 18 years, if there's been some kind of celebrity scandal or death or, big story, guess who gets to jump on the phone with radio stations and to be the entertainment correspondent? And that's fine, because that's something that I've always really liked about news. That was kind of what got me interested in the first place, was you come in the day and you have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, you kind of know you're going to be covering celebrities, but and I'm somebody who doesn't really like change, but there's something which is very weird about me. There's something that I've always loved about having the show planned, ready to go, and then all of a sudden, boom, breaking news, and everything is flipped upside down and you start all over again. So that's what we're doing today, because, I mean, if you just think about this, Dr. Ruth, Richard Simmons, Shannen Doherty, all died within the last week. The Republican National Convention happened. Bob Newhart died. Doesn't it seem like those first three deaths that I just mentioned, doesn't that seem like that happened so long ago? That's maybe just because of the news cycle that we have, where it's 24/7, right? So something that happens 2 days ago seemed like it happened, a lifetime ago. But I mean, these were all really significant, entertainment stories. Not the National Convention. I'm saying the celebrity deaths. So because I'm an entertainment correspondent and I have been for years, I'm not reporting the deaths, by the way, because that really is old news. That's exactly my point. But I do have stories to tell about those celebrities. And because that's all happened, this is one of the dangers of doing a show once a week, as we do now, where it's out on Friday. If something happens Friday afternoon, a major story, and we're screwed because it's like, oh shit, we just aired, 2 hours ago, and now we've got to wait an entire week to come back and talk about it. So, coming up on the show, my experiences with Dr. Ruth, Richard Simmons. I don't really have anything about Shannen Doherty, but did you hear that she just finally officially got divorced days after she died? And then Bob Newhart. And then I was watching the Republican National Convention all week. And why would I do? Because, again, the celebrity appearances. And believe it or not, 2 of those celebs that you saw on the stage Thursday night have been on the radio with me. So we're going to talk about that as well. It's coming up on the Scribble, and it starts right after this.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate, at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate, at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes.
Ever had something to get off your chest but never had the balls to say it? That's a load of crap. Speak Free with JB.com is exactly what you've been waiting for. Your chance to tell it like it is and not care what anybody else thinks. Have your say on issues of the day. Join newspaper and radio columnist Jeremy Bradley as he tells it like it is. Hundreds of thousands of people have stopped by, including some well-known celebrities who have had a chat with JB and speak candidly about what's really going on in the world. You can join them too. Have a rant or a rave. Be brave and head on over to www.speakfreewithjb.com now.
JB here, back on the Scribble. All right, so that first death that we heard about was Dr. Ruth Westheimer. Now, our younger listeners probably have no clue, not a clue who that is. But for people in my generation and older, she was she was a sex therapist, really, if that's the term that's how she was described by TV viewers, and she was on the radio even back in the day. And so we had her on my syndicated Top 40 radio show called Top of the Charts. We had her as a Valentine's guest. Now, we still have the segment online, by the way, if you go to speakfreecelebwatch.com. We discussed playing that segment again here on the show this week, but then there's just been so much other stuff that's happened that we're going to go out of our 30-minute time frame window, and we're just not going to do that. So, take it from me. It was morning radio, Valentine's Day, and I thought, okay, let's talk with this old woman. And you have to remember that I would have been in my late 20s, mid-20s, I guess, at the time. So it is a bit strange to be, and I mean, I'm a big old homosexual, so that wasn't an issue. It's not like I was getting turned on hearing this, old woman talk about sex. But there was still a little bit of kind of, okay, we're on how many different radio stations? This is morning radio, so you have to be careful about what you can say. That's when I was told you're allowed one vagina in a medical context. Any other times will get you either bleeped or basically canceled. And I thought, how would that even come up? So we're talking, and these segments that we were doing with celebrities were generally about 8 minutes. They weren't anything longer than that. Quite honestly, if I were to tell you, if you go to speakfreecelebwatch.com, where we have all those interviews, if there was anything that was less than 8 minutes, that generally means that I didn't have anything to talk about, or I wasn't interested in them, so we cut it short. There are some interviews, however, like Jeff Probst, and when Allison Janney would come on the show, those were running like 20, 30 minutes. Bob Saget, I think, was another good one that we went almost 30 minutes. But anyway, so we have Dr. Ruth on, and at one point, and I was fairly new into syndication at that time on the radio, when she made the and I can still hear her saying it, where that it's not always about the climax, and I remember feeling my face get hot. Truly, this is not even an exaggeration. And after that I completely blanked out as to what she was saying, because as soon as she said that, I just thought, I'm in shit. I am in trouble. Now, again, you have to remember that I don't know. This is right. This is morning radio. Our moms listening to this when their kids are getting ready for school. Who is listening to this right now? And here I am, this 20-some-year-old guy, right? Because you've got the people who are maybe like Howard Stern, the shock jock kind of thing. And I just thought, oh my God, this is the end of my, I'm done. I'm being pulled off these radio stations. And again, you have to realize that this person has she's Dr. Ruth. It's not like you're just getting some 80-year-old woman off the street to start talking about orgasms and stuff. So, this is a professional, but still, right? And so it was right when those words came out of her mouth, I just thought, oh my God. And we weren't even talking about having sex. We were just talking about a romantic kind of, what can you do? And I think, if I'm not mistaken, she mentioned like swinging from the chandeliers, or just some kind of she was using different terms like that. That was allowed. But yeah, as soon as she said climax, I was just like, oh crap, here we go. And she obviously is a professional, where she's been in broadcasting for so long, so she was obviously clear in what was allowed, what wasn't. But again, like I said, me being a newbie at the time, I just thought, oh my God. Now, around that same time is when I was covering the Voice and all of the NBC and Fox reality shows. So with NBC, that was America's Got Talent, that was The Voice, American Idol was Fox. And The Voice was taping on the Warner Brothers lot, which is where the Ellen DeGeneres talk show, a lot of TV shows shot there, but that's they were on the same Warner Brothers lot. And so I was covering the season finale, or just even covering the season of The Voice. And the studios were kind of close to each other, not really, but I was going to the commissary where, there's food or whatever. And so it was the afternoon, and I guess Richard Simmons was just on Ellen's show. And I didn't, I honestly didn't even know that it was the Ellen studio right there. And all of a sudden there's just this like commotion and loud kind of like screaming. And I was like, what is this? We're on a TV lot. Like, what's going on? Richard Simmons comes into the commissary, and it was just the fun ensued. Like, I'd never met somebody who had such energy, such excitement. And he's one of those people where it's the first time that you meet him. He doesn't even know your name, but you just feel like we've been best friends forever. That's how he made people feel. And so that was going back. Now, see, this is the thing, is that I believe it was the same year as Dr. Ruth. So that was either 2010, 2011, because that's when I was basically covering. I was still living in Canada and commuting back and forth to Los Angeles. It was almost like every 2 weeks I was flying back and forth covering events. So it was very early on in the radio days. And he was just, getting silly and like trying to get people moving and, going around and commenting on what people were eating, right? Because that's his thing. And it was just so funny. And so I kind of like got in on it too, because I was silly and just kind of feel like, whatever. You're doing this with Richard Simmons. You don't look the fool. I'm dressed, he's got his big bedazzled shirts, whatever. And it was just really fun. And so, I got in contact with him after the fact and just kind of like introduced myself after, and I said like, oh, it was me. Richard was big into emailing, not necessarily as far as I know into texting, but you got emails from him. And so that had just carried on. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying that we were like friends and buddies and doing coffee and hanging out. That was not the case. It was just Richard was one of those people where if you met him in wherever, San Diego, Detroit, Reno, Nevada, wherever, name a city, and you either gave him your phone number, or if he, just felt comfortable with you and gave you his contact information, you would get those calls. He would just call and check up on you. He would just, out of nowhere email you. And that was something that was just really special. Now, he knew at that time very little about me, and then just through the course of emails we he got to know more about me. See, this is one of those things where like somebody like him, you kind of the persona, him, and we didn't have any kind of intellectual, because again, it's emails, right? Like how deep can you get in emails? Never did I have a phone call with him. That was never the case at all. But then later on down the road, when I moved to West Hollywood, we had operations in Winnipeg and then West Hollywood, and then ultimately I started to live there for a while. And he was in the Hollywood Hills, I was West Hollywood. They're sort of close-ish. And again, the emails, and it was just, again, it was very professional. It wasn't really any palsy kind of, like, oh, let's go do dinner. None of that. But because then we were producing our radio shows in West Hollywood, we had some emails going back and forth. Now, we never had him on our Top of the Charts show, which was our big syndicated radio show. We were licensing content. So we, because this is where it's going to get technical, okay? He wouldn't advertise specific things on our show. Like they weren't a title sponsor when he had new products and things like that. So it was a little bit tough because we couldn't do that on our show based on some of the stations that we were running on. We would need to do like disclosures and all this other kind of stuff. So what we had done was we had just taped segments and then we licensed the sound bites. And so what that means is you weren't hearing me talking to him, but I would ask the question, like I would tee him up for an answer, and then we would record his answers, and then we were licensing those so that those clips could then be used on the local stations and make it seem like, oh, Richard Simmons stopped by, and then he was doing an interview with their local host. And that was ideal because we were basically having a conversation, and the local station could then go and pull me out and then drop them in, and you don't lose that feel for it being an actual conversation, right? Because I'm sure you've heard sound bites on a radio station or on TV where it's somebody just answering. So let's say the question for me is, when did you get into radio? My answer would just be, I got into radio 18 years ago. right? That's not the exact tone or the flow of how you would answer the question if you were having an actual conversation, right? Oh, hey, Jeremy, when did you get into radio? I got into radio when but you're going to have that little kind of at the beginning, like, oh, well, I got... But if you're just reading a question and then you start answering, it's not the same. And that's where, when I started to interview celebrities on our shows, we were denied almost every celebrity at the beginning, and we were offered up those sound bites. So it's like, so-and-so's talking about their book. Well, here are the clips you can use where you basically make it sound like you're asking them the question. And I said, but that doesn't even flow as a conversation, so it doesn't work for us. Now, if you want to just drop it in and go, here's what Richard Simmons says about his new book, then that works. But we didn't do that on our shows. So that's where, for our syndication company, our platform, we would do that. We would get interviews or celebrities, and we would then clip them, and then we would license those out to stations so that the little crap town Oklahoma station can now have... Alva, Oklahoma, I think, was one of the cities that we were in, right? We were in Scottsdale. We were Scottsdale, Arizona, Alva, Oklahoma, Spanish Fork, Utah, I think, was another one. We were on just the smallest of the small stations. But for them, they would never get access to a Hollywood celebrity like we were getting, right? So that was kind of the thing where we were attractive to those little radio stations because we've got the Hollywood connection. And for the Hollywood connection, we were a big draw because now we've got bigger reach. They're not doing the interview just for one station because that's something that the publicist would ask you, which is, well, what markets are you in? Well, for us, we could go, we're not in New York or LA, but we're in 15, 40 smaller markets. So collectively, we've got good numbers there, right? And that is beneficial where if it's somebody like a comedian or whoever is going city to city, right, on tour, then that's better than the commitment to go all the way to the LA radio TV station, do hair and makeup, go through, get mic'd up, do all this other stuff. Whereas they can just pick up the phone, do 8 minutes with me, and then now we can have that in 7 different cities. So they got the one interview done on the phone, and now we've got content for all those stations. All right, that's some little behind the scenes there about Richard. So going back to what my point was, he was never officially on my radio show. I figured I've got to give you the kind of how it works, because you'd be like, well, wait a second. So you're talking about having him on the radio, but he was never on the radio with you. Yes and no. Okay. So he came to our office. Now, this was just a few years ago when he was, sort of largely out of the public eye, but we were doing something for, what were we even doing? Oh my God, I can't even remember. My radio show was, we were off the air at that time, now that I'm connecting those time dots. So we were still just doing something for local stations. It would have been something with his weight loss thing or some kind of product. Anyway, so he came through the office, and we were just launching our coffee company at the time. So we had with the guys living in the loft. And Richard Simmons comes in with this basket of muffins and runs through. My dogs are there, and he, of course, I think he had 4 dogs when I first met him. Now I'm going to get in trouble if I get that wrong. I know that he had dogs. I don't know. It might have been 4. I can't remember. And so it was just really funny because he'd popped in, and of course our coffee guys are these gorgeous Los Angeles models. So Richard had a bit of fun with that, if you know what I mean. Wink, wink. But yeah, so that was our experience, or my experience with Richard Simmons. Now, as you've also heard, then it was his birthday the day before he died. I did email him that day, and I never heard back. So that's kind of a sad thing. What I'm hoping, now this is going to sound sick, is that I hope I do get a reply. You know how sometimes a celebrity dies and then somebody in their family or whatever takes over the account? So whether this is his brother or his manager, whoever, I kind of do hope that I at least even get a reply from somebody, and then they can let me know, did he read it, right? Because sometimes you get an email, and then you don't reply right away, right? So I almost kind of want to know, did he at least get it? And that would be a bit of closure for me. Like I said, it's not that we were friends. It's not anything whatever. But I'm sure even too, I was going to say, I'm sure if you showed him a lineup of people and asked which one's Jeremy Bradley, I don't know that he would remember. But yeah, I think that he would. He's got a very good memory like that. So, and then we moved to Shannen Doherty, who she had been battling cancer for a long time. That was no secret. And we just reported on our entertainment show that she officially got divorced, and she got custody of a bunch of vehicles and her ex-husband's photography company or something, and he's not allowed to use any photos of her. And she got a bunch of cars in the deal. So that's good for her. Good for her. I don't know. I'm going to jump to Bob Newhart, even though we've got that whole Republican convention thing. But Bob Newhart died, Thursday. We got the word Thursday afternoon. The one thing for me about being an entertainment correspondent is, so like on Saturday when all those 3 deaths were announced, that means that I then jump on the radio and I do these calls with local stations. You've seen this before where somebody dies, and all of a sudden on CNN, they've got, the host of Entertainment Tonight or whatever coming on and talking about it. Well, that's what I do for the radio stations that were airing our content. Not for all of them. There was like 40-something of them, but certainly a good handful of them. And so what happened was, we've got the Dr. Ruth thing first, and I go and I do a couple of the stations, and then all of a sudden we hear Richard Simmons. As I'm doing the calls about Dr. Ruth, I get the pop-up. I've got a news alert. I've got a news wire service. Not like you're getting the news alert from CNN that pops up on your phone. We've got an actual news wire service that our company has subscribed to. So that means that any of those networks that gave you that news flash on your phone, they would have got that at the same time. So we generally will get those 10, 15 minutes, maybe even an hour before. So I saw that was coming on that was on the radar, and I just thought, oh my God, that's bigger than Dr. Ruth for a lot of people. So I'm doing it, and then all of a sudden I now circle around, because it's like now I'm coming back on the same radio stations to talk about Richard Simmons, right? And so what ended up happening was they keep coming to me, and this is sort of a sick kind of a joke, but that's where I was like, all right, so I'm back to talk about who's died next. But that's really how it was, because then you've got Shannen Doherty, So I kind of felt bad for the hosts, because they're just throwing to me to recap all these celebrity deaths, and at some point you kind of sit there going, who's next? Right? Like, we're not done. There's going to be another one. And sure as shit, after Bob Newhart, and I was actually out for lunch with my husband, so I get that. I think I've talked about it before, that I have 3 phones. I've got my personal phone, I've got a company phone, and then I've got our news alert phone, which is just the news wire service on that phone. And it has a very distinct kind of a sound. I think they actually talked about it on the Newsroom, the TV show, the HBO show, with Jeff Daniels, where it's got a very distinct, like a chirp, like an alert kind of a sound. So it makes that sound on my phone, and I carry it with me if I'm not in the office, because I need to be in touch, obviously, with the news. And so it did that, and I was like, oh my God, Bob Newhart. And then literally not even like 5 minutes later, all of a sudden it comes up with Lou Dobbs. Now, Lou Dobbs is, people can hate him because he's a Trump supporter, but he's a legendary broadcaster, right? He's one of the people that kind of started CNN as well when that all started. Oh my God, I'm blanking on the name. Who started CNN? Ted Turner. Thank you very much, Bonnie. She jumped in to save me on that one. So that was another day on Thursday afternoon where I'm like, okay, there's going to be one more. We're not done yet. But there was just those 2, as far as I know. I checked out because of the Republican National Convention. Now, full disclosure, as a Canadian, whatever. You guys do what you want to do in the United States. But I've got my thoughts and my celebrity run-ins with those people who were on the stage Thursday night coming up on the Scribble right after this.
It's never too early to start thinking about your next holiday. Have you checked out Mexico recently? From tequila tasting, swimming with horses, to ziplining through the jungle and watching whales and dolphins in their natural habitat, Puerto Vallarta has it all. Visit mexico.jbonair.com to see all the fun PV has to offer. That's at mexico.jbonair.com for hundreds of photos, interviews, and videos from around the tourist hotspot. Check out mexico.jbonair.com for all the fun. That's mexico.jbonair.com.
Who are the Kardashians feuding with now? What did that little thug Justin Bieber do this time? Who's getting hitched? And who's headed for Splitsville? Hear the latest celebrity news and gossip every day on Entertainment Wrap-Up. The good, the bad, the ugly, but mostly the ridiculously hilarious. It's all recapped in this daily segment at entertainmentwrapup.com. Have a laugh at the expense of the rich and famous when they take themselves way too seriously. It's 3 minutes of time-wasting fun at entertainmentwrapup.com. Check out Entertainment Wrap Up at entertainmentwrapup.com. Brought to you by Speak Free Books.
JB here, back on the Scribble. So I've got to totally backtrack because really the major story on Saturday was Donald Trump getting shot in the ear. So I don't want to make it... So that's why the weekend was just nutso for me. So in that last segment, I was recapping those entertainment deaths that I was talking about. And then you've got to mix in that the, attempted assassination of Donald Trump. So that was all playing out Saturday. And I mentioned at the top of the show that we had pre-taped a bunch of our July episodes of The Scribble long before. And we just kind of thought, wow, there's just too much happening, right? So we've got to jump on and do a live show on this Friday, July 19th. Now, the Republican National Convention had a bunch of celebrity appearances throughout the week, but the big names would be, Dana White, Hulk Hogan. I mean, come on now. Does it get any... I don't know. And then Lee Greenwood had made appearances throughout the week. So what's my connection to those guys? Well, 2 of them anyway. Hulk Hogan was on the radio with me almost exactly 10 years ago. Almost exactly. He was on August 1st, 2014. And I remember that because it was my birthday. We had scheduled a chat. He was on for, I believe it was WrestleMania something or other. Again, our celebrity interview website still has the segment on there, speakfreecelebwatch.com. And I kind of thought it was funny because, well, Hulk Hogan is calling you on your birthday, right? I mean, come on. So it was always interesting because I didn't follow wrestling. I didn't know. I mean, I knew who he was because as a kid growing up, my brothers were into wrestling. My straight brothers were into wrestling. And okay, he's the guy that wears the yellow shirt with like the tassels or the fringe, whatever you call it. And he's got the bandana and that's Hulk Hogan, So I always got a kick out of doing those kinds of interviews, just simply, this is a guy that I've, seen on TV and he's this iconic figure. And we did the segment and we chatted it up and it was really quite funny because after that I was going out for my birthday with my parents. And obviously the time had changed. Now for me, sometimes we had to do interviews we had to be on the down low. We had to be on the hush hush. So I couldn't mention some of the names, even if it was my own parents. Not that they were going to be tipping off TMZ or it would be a big deal. But my parents were getting frustrated because I had to change the time that we were getting together for my birthday. And only once we taped the interview was I able to say that. And so I go to my parents, no, I was just on the phone with Hulk Hogan. And they're like, yeah, okay, yeah. And so I'm like, yeah, no, really, I was. And I mean, I don't know why they didn't believe me because that was, my job for the longest time. But nevertheless, so that's why I remember the Hulk Hogan. And he was just cool, right? He was like a lot of celebrities who come on, yet he plays a character, and so he was in character during the segment. But I always love when the celebrity flips out of that. Like Gilbert Gottfried was another great one, who would just be kind of the regular kind of straight voice that he had, and then when we were rolling, he's got that, it was. I always found those types of people fascinating. So Hulk Hogan was on the show, and then Lee Greenwood was on with me about 3 or 4 years ago, and we talked about music that he had, or it was, I guess, the anniversary of some song or whatever. Nevertheless, we talked about music. We did not talk about how much you love Trump because our radio show was not political, right? It was we had a music show, so we were talking about music. But we did discuss this whole kind of thing, like, well, what does that do for your own song? Right? We know when Oprah says that she loves your product, you're through the roof on that, right? And we know that Trump supporters are, very, very intense. So what does that do to your music then? Like, do you see a spike in sales that puts you on the charts? I mean, he's an old man, and now all of a sudden all these young people know who he is and they're singing his song. That's all you could ask for when you're an artist at that age, right? So it was great. I remember, I talked about just going on the show, and then before and after those segments, he was really nice to sit and talk with. I mean, it was great to have. He was on the phone. He wasn't in person. But there's some of those celebrities that just they don't even wait. You'll say, "Great, thank you so much for joining us today," and then all of a sudden you go beep 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 because they've hung up. Others will want to, sit and chat with you for a while, and Lee was one of those people. So it was fun to kind of talk to him and hear about his music career and his history and his legacy in the music world. Again, he's going to be forever now connected to Donald Trump, which people are going to automatically hate his music, right? Because he's associated with Trump. But we were talking from an artist's perspective and what he had accomplished over his music career. One more break, and I'll be back on the Scribble to wrap things up right after this.
We hear you chirping. Get scribbling. Tweet up the Scribble at The Scribble Show. Join the discussion with Jeremy Bradley. It's all going down right now on Twitter at The Scribble Show and at thescribbleshow.com.
I love that we still call it Twitter. I'm never going to call it X. Send me an email. Do you call it X or do you call it Twitter? Send me an email, live@jbonair.com, live@jbonair.com. My God, Dr. Ruth, Richard Simmons, Shannen Doherty, Bob Newhart, the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, the Republican National Convention, all in 1 week. My name is Jeremy Bradley. This is The Scribble. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Want more Scribble? Check out thescribbleshow.com for past shows, celebrity interviews, cheapskate tips, and more. That's at thescribbleshow.com and on Twitter at The Scribble Show. The Scribble is a speak-free media presentation.
If you want some real heat